was 5 years old, my grandfather passed away. We all went to his funeral. My grandmother lived in an apartment building. We came back. Everybody was in the elevator. We went up. I looked back. My grandfather was still in the elevator. I said, "Bye, Papa." Everyone had a big blowout at me, basically indicating that I was being disrespectful, which I understand. But he was in the elevator, and he went back down, and that's when I first saw a spirit. He came again when I was 18. My dad was in the hospital. He was having heart surgery, and I came down from our loft area, and he was just standing right beside our dining room table. Almost like comfort is all that I can describe it as. He was just there to comfort me, to let me know that everything was going to be fine. And then in 2013, my mom had a massive heart attack at our Buck-and-Doe at the end of the night and passed away. So I started to go to mediums, and then I recognized that a lot of the things they were telling me were things that I had already predicted prior to them happening. So my mom's death, for example, I predicted. Or, the messages that they were giving me were things that I already knew. So I thought, okay, well, this is really kind of interesting. I'm going to look into it more. And then the pandemic happened. Started doing yoga every day. Really enjoyed that. So I took a manifestation course, and then from the manifestation course started to kind of like receive messages from the universe, basically, and decided that I was going to take a mediumship course. I took the course. I started reading. We have practice mediumship reading like within that course. And I read this girl, didn't know who she was, knew nothing about her, told her whole life story in 5 minutes. And she's like, "How long have you been doing this?" And I'm like, "A freckle past a hair. It's 5 minutes." And she's like, "What the? Okay, I guess this is a thing." So I started to do practice on my friends and family and anybody really that would let me read them. And it came to find that basically my gifts, everybody has this talent, so there's no real need for anybody to think that I'm special or that any medium has some sort of additional knowledge that everybody doesn't have access to. That's not the case. So as I was starting to read people, I really figured out that this is just something that everyone has access to. It's just whether or not you continuously flex the muscle. So it's kind of like going to the gym. You repeatedly, time after time, are doing these readings, and then it comes however it comes. So some mediums will do things to distract their conscious mind by writing things down, or you can channel many different ways: embodied dancing, intuitive dancing. You can use pendulums and oracle card decks, and a lot of people will use tarot card decks. I didn't find any of that really worked. We were given scripts that you were to sort of follow or abide by, and I never really, just like school, it just never really worked for me. So I open up my channel and I will get psychic information, mediumship information, and basically intuitive guidance that people need to receive. So if somebody has a blockage in their life or they have something that's not working for them, Spirit will bring me the answer that they need sometimes, as long as it's something that they're meant to know in that moment. I always knew that I was weird, different. When I was at school, I'd get really overwhelmed by other people's energy. So I'm an only child, and I really like to spend time alone, and always have. That's just my thing. I like to be by myself. So when I'd go to school, I would get overwhelmed, and a lot of times I would almost kind of retreat at, on my lunch break or on my recess, and I would sit in this one tree. And everyone would make fun of me because they're like, "Oh, you're a tree hugger," or I was accused of humping the tree multiple times because I would literally just wrap my arms around it and stay there, but it was because it was grounding my energy. So I didn't recognize at that point that not everybody had that, because some of my friends did share some of their experiences as well. I had a friend who saw UFOs, which was pretty cool, and we talked openly about that. So I didn't feel completely isolated or alone, but definitely like to spend time by myself. And now that I know how perceptive you can be to energy, it really makes sense as to why you would want to be on your own, because you're not only feeling the energy of humanity, but you're feeling the energy of the 5D as well. So a spirit, when I say, or I'm referencing in spirit, it could be one of your loved ones in spirit, and when I'm having a conversation with that person, I'll be specific as to who it is. It's called evidential mediumship, meaning that I will identify that person based on how they look, how they behaved. Sometimes their mannerisms or how they would speak comes up. So if they were somebody who swore a lot or talked really quickly or talked with their hands, they might share that with me in a vision or just in the way that they're speaking, and I will share that with that person. When I'm referring to spirit, I mean in general. So, it could be my mom sharing a message with me, or this person's guides. So everybody has a group of guides that basically assists them throughout the course of their life. And then you've got your higher self, which is basically the most expanded version of you. The person who has everything that they want on every timeline that's available to them. It's kind of talking about the quantum field and we'd really have to get into that for me to fully explain it. But when I'm referencing spirit, I mean anyone in spirit or anybody in the spirit realm that could communicate with us. We are here to discuss a paranormal activity that happened at my house. So just to disclaim for anybody that's watching this that is a psychic medium, this is prior to when I was tuning into my own gifts, so I didn't have the awareness to know exactly what I was dealing with at the time. The way I was taught mediumship is that you don't necessarily buy in or invite unwanted spirits into your realm. So some people believe in demons, some people believe in fairies and mermaids and dragons and all sorts of other entities, and I was taught that you don't necessarily pay attention to anything that's dark. I didn't resonate with that because of the experience that I had in my own house. So we purchased this house in 2015. We bought it from someone who was having an unpleasant time in his life, a mental breakdown. And when we purchased, we wrote into our offer, please leave the home as it is, don't touch anything else. At this point, he had lots of furniture here. Downstairs looked like two superheroes had gone at it and, were smashing walls and trying to kill each other downstairs. There were load-bearing walls missing. It was a giant mess. It was a lot. It was very overwhelming. So I was 4 months pregnant. I had a daughter who was just 1.5 at the time, and we had 4 days to basically empty the entire house. And the reason why I'm setting it up this way is because it's relevant to what we're going to show you in the future. So this experience was really interesting because we had this sort of dumpster out on the driveway, and I'm pulling rubble in and out of the basement. But when I got there, I remember turning to my dad and saying, what is all this? Why do we have so much stuff here? I was expecting there to be rubble, but this guy has left everything. He left a bed, he left, I think there was a couch, all of his dressers. Downstairs, I found his wife's wedding dress. I found all their family photos, books, games, you name it, it was downstairs. We had lots and lots and lots of his stuff. But the most peculiar thing that I found was what looked to be, I'm going to assume, some sort of satanic Romanian Bible. So he was a Romanian gentleman. And I was looking at it, and there was a lot of sort of demonic imagery. And the room that it was in gave me the willies. So even at that point, when I hadn't tuned yet into my gifts, I was feeling willies and anxious, just feeling really uncomfortable in that room. So I decided to just pack it up. It was giving me the ick every time that I tried to pick it up and touch it. So I put it in a box and grabbed it up, put it in the dumpster, didn't give it another thought. My daughter, my oldest daughter, was in the room above the room where I found this book. And over the years, she had always had sleeping issues. Ever since we got here. At the old house, no problem. When we moved here, sleeping issues galore. And we live on a 1-level bungalow, and down the hallway, we had a dog. I think at that time, she would have been maybe 4 or 5 years old, would not venture down that hallway. We thought at first that it was just where our cold air return was, that she didn't like it because it was at the opening of the hallway, but we plugged it up and closed it, and it didn't change anything. So my daughter is little, and for the first year or two, we thought, okay, she doesn't like sleeping. That's pretty normal. Kids are horrific when it comes to sleeping. But it got worse and worse and worse, to the point where she was in our bed every single night. And when you have another child who's also a toddler, you're exhausted, so you don't want to deal with that. And at first I thought, maybe she's just being a little kid. Maybe she's kind of bratty. I don't know what I was thinking. Really, I was just frustrated because nobody was sleeping. So fast forward to, I want to say 2018, maybe 2017, 2018. She's at the point where she's in her big girl bed, right? She's not in a crib anymore. She's not in the cage. So she can get out, and she's getting out frequently. And one night, my husband and I are sitting on the couch, and we're just watching TV, and we hear the whoop, she's coming down the hallway, and I'm like, okay, here it comes. And it's maybe 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night. We pause the show. She comes to the end of the hallway, eyes completely shut. Mommy, Daddy, there's something in my room sucking my energy. Every hair on my body was on full display. I must have looked like a chicken who just got out of a really cold bath after being plucked. All the feathers are gone. And my husband just kind of looked at me, and he's not a believer at this point at all. And he's like, what did she just say? I said, her eyes are closed. And he goes, I know, she's still standing there at the end of the hallway, not really communicating with us in any way. And as a kid, I used to sleepwalk, so I'm not completely ignorant to it. And she's just standing there. And I was like, okay, this is weird. She's come out of her room every night this week. Like, what is going on here? So I tried to put her back in her bed. She fought us. Put her back into our bed. No problem. Falls asleep right away. So I thought, okay, this is getting out of hand. I'm just going to sleep in her room and see what the problem is. My husband doesn't believe in any of this stuff, so if anybody's going to have an experience, it's going to be me. And I called out to whatever was in her room. Rookie mistake. I said, and again, was not a medium at this time, so didn't have the awareness that I now have and need. If you're going to attach yourself to anyone, attach yourself to me. And then I crawl in the bed, go to sleep. Witching hour, or the time in which the veil is very thin, is between 2 and 4 o'clock in the morning. Lots of people have night awakenings. It's for 2 reasons. One, your nervous system is completely distorted and you are releasing cortisol at that time, which is why a lot of people will wake up and then have a really difficult time falling back asleep. You can work on that through vagus nerve toning. The other reason is Spirit is trying to communicate with you at that time because you are in the sleep cycle typically where they can access you. I'm laying in the bed and I'm sleeping, and all of a sudden I hear creaks at the end of her bed. Okay, that was kind of weird. It's a 1960s bungalow. She's right at the end of the run for the AC. I'm trying to come up with all the logical ways as to why this is taking place. Nothing's coming. There's no AC on. There's no furnace on. There's no nothing. And I'm like, okay, that was a little weird. I hear it again. And at this point, I can see a very tall, almost like Slender Man vibe at the end of the bed. But picture the biggest Cheshire cat smile, like Alice in Wonderland, that purple cat, huge Cheshire cat smile, and the greenest slit eyes you've ever seen in your life. And I was like, oh, swearing under my breath, hiding, because I was like, what the bloody hell was that? Like, what is going on here? So I thought, okay, you're just really tired. Like, you must be in some sort of sleep psychosis. This is just a figment of your imagination. It's fine. The next morning, I get a message from my friend who's a medium. And she's like, hey, Britt, what's going on in your house? And I'm like, oh, that's a little weird. And I explained everything. And at this point, I had kept my daughter home from school because she hadn't slept in days. I didn't sleep the night before, obviously. So I was going to have a nap. And then that night, I was going to try sleeping in her room again to make sure that what I was experiencing was real and that I wasn't just having some sort of figment of my imagination sort of situation where sleep psychosis happens and I'm just beside myself. And so my girlfriend is kind of talking me through things, and she's like, how are you feeling? What's going on? What's the energy? Blah, blah, blah. We leave it at that. At nighttime, I put my daughter in my bed. I go and sleep in her bed for the night. And I had had a nap at this point during the day, so I knew that I was solid for my sleep because her and I slept, I think, for like 3 hours. And around 3:30 in the morning, I feel a little tugging on my toe. And I'm pretty sure my soul just up and left. It was gone. It's never coming back. Like, she gone. And I peeked out from underneath, didn't see anything. And I was like, okay, that was strange. And then the spirit kind of presented itself as this tall, lanky thing again, Cheshire cat smile. And then all of a sudden it shrunk down into this really like gnome sort of leprechaun looking thing. If you've ever seen the movie Leprechaun, that is the vibe that I was getting, but still with the Cheshire cat smile, tugging on my toes. And I'm like, okay, do I scream out? Do I say anything? I just kept repeating under my breath, you are not real, you are not real, you stay with me, you don't bug my daughter. Because at this point, I don't want him to like attach. And I'm watching all these movies in my mind, okay, poltergeist, and then it attaches itself to kids. And I'm, coming up with all these different ideas. Leave it at that, wake up in the morning, I kept her home again. My girlfriend's messaging me like crazy. She's saying all the things that are sort of coming up for her. And she's telling me how to basically remove this entity from your home. And so what she suggested was that we do a full cleaning of the house. You open all the windows, you sage everywhere, and you close the windows back. If you have any welcome signs, you're basically welcoming them into your house. So remove any welcome signs because you don't want to invite that energy in. And then, you can use Palo Santo, you can use selenite, different protection crystals, whatever you want. So as you can imagine, I'm very thankful that we live in a bit of a remote area, because if anybody was watching through the windows what was going on here, they would be like, whoop, somebody needs to be committed. It looked pretty wild. Even in my own mind, not being a medium and not knowing what I know now, I was like, oh, wow, what is happening? I start the process. I get chills all over my body. And it really started to heighten when I was casting it out. So what I was saying was, you're not welcome here. And then I started screaming, like, F off, get out of my house. You're not welcome. And I just kept repeating it. And I had my daughter home with me. She wasn't necessarily witnessing what I was doing, but I wanted to make sure that she was here also, in case it had already somehow attached itself to her. And I didn't want it to be out of the house when I'm here trying to cast it out of the house. And all I felt for a full 24-hour period while this was going on was almost as if, you know when you see a baby monkey on the mother's back? That's what I felt on my back, except it was cold as ice for 24 hours. I thought I was having a stroke. Like, I wasn't sure what was happening. I called my husband. I'm like, look, something really weird's going on here. This is getting pretty wild. I don't know what's going on, but I just want to let you know this is what I'm doing. He goes, okay, you sound pretty nutty. And I'm like, yeah, but it's going to fix things. So that goes on for a full 24 hours. As I'm talking to my friend, she's asking me questions. She's like, do you still have any of the belongings of the person who used to live in your house? And I said, we do. We have a bunch of stuff because we moved to a country property. We thought, some of his gardening tools and that would be good. And she goes, no, I think you have a desk. And I'm like, I do have a desk. And she goes, that desk has something written in it and you're not going to like what you see. And I thought, okay. And she goes, think back when you moved in. Was there anything weird that you saw or pulled out or witnessed? And I said, yeah, when we got here, there was this weird Bible and it really creeped me out. Like, every time I went to pick it up, I got the ick and I was almost gagging. And she goes, okay, I think that he was summoning things to the house. Have you heard from any of the neighbors? Well, our neighbor had told us on multiple occasions that he was into some really weird stuff. Some sort of religious thing was happening, and we thought, okay, that makes sense. He's calling in or whatever he's doing, creating a portal. And then she said, go look in the desk. You're going to find a huge black spider and something written in the desk. I open up the desk. A giant tarantula-like spider. We're in Canada. Obviously, it wasn't a tarantula, but it just looked giant. Or maybe I was just scared at this point. And then written inside the desk is Satan. And I'm like, okay, I'm moving. Pack my bags, I'm out. She goes, no, you're fine. So we did the completion of the entire thing, removed the desk, put it out on the side of the road. And she's like, you should have set it on fire or like destroyed it in some way. I wasn't going to be able to do that to a steel desk. It wouldn't have mattered what I did. So we just put it out to the side of the road and basically I blessed it while I was doing that. I went so far as to get water and bless the water myself and fling it all over the house. And then we had really old doors. And I'm not a religious person by any means, but I was beside myself with this goings on because it really freaked me out. So I wrote tiny little crosses on the doors because I knew my husband was going to replace them soon, and I put crosses on every door. And that night, we were sitting back on the couch. My daughter was sleeping in her room, no problem. And then I could just feel something coming out to the end of the hallway and peeking around the corner. Like, you know that feeling when you're being watched? The first night when I was in the bed, I felt this like eerie ick, like this feeling as if I was being undressed with my eyes. I can't explain it outside of like the way I imagine, I'm going to say something terrible, a pedophile looks at children. That's the vibe of what I got the first night. When we were sitting back on the couch around the corner again, I felt just this peak, this tiny little peak. So then the next day I did one more clearing and everything felt light in the house. My husband and I even started arguing less. The children were arguing less. Like, overall, the entire energy in the home improved. And at this point, we hadn't completely renovated the house. So since then, I've now put my office downstairs and completely shifted the energy. I've got tons of crystals in there. That's where I do all my work. That's where all the magic happens, all the channeling happens. So really just shifting the energy in there, I think, helps prevent this person or thing or whatever you want to call it from coming back. So we've been good. I've only felt it maybe 1 or 2 times since. The only other thing that we feel here now is I smell smoke downstairs at the base of our stairs. So the gentleman who built this house has shown me multiple times that he used to hide from his wife in the cellar and smoke his cigarettes. There's no evidence of smoke in the cellar, but I can smell it when I just come down the stairs every once in a while. Typically, I don't find an energy in a home that isn't associated with the home in some way. So what I mean by that is typically the entity, or not entity, I shouldn't say it that way, the spirit that I feel is a direct relation to the home. So either somebody who lived in the home or who was an owner of the home. This is the first time that I've ever personally run into something that was not what I would consider human. I haven't run into it again. That being said, I'm also not actively going out there and trying to find it by any means. I haven't done any paranormal investigation or anything of that nature. Typically what I find in real estate when I'm entering homes is that there's energies that are associated with the homes, or it can be residual energy of the people who lived in the homes. So if the home itself was maybe not well loved, so the people didn't care for it, or the people within the home were constantly yelling at each other, very like toxic environment, lots of back and forth, the home will actually absorb that energy and you'll find things go wrong with the home. So if I could share a story about that, in real estate, of course, I've seen many of these types of homes, but there's one that sticks out in particular. It was in a county not too far from here, and my clients reached out. They wanted to see the home. They couldn't go for 2 weeks. I instantly got anxious, which is very unusual. When I go to show a home, I usually feel nothing. There's nothing. And I felt instantly anxious, and I was like, okay, that was kind of weird. And again, this is before I became a medium. We drive to the home. It's got this cute little drive-up driveway. It's on the top of a hill, and they kept mentioning in the comments how it's got a turret. And I was like, oh, I can't wait to see this turret. I go to get the lockbox. It's on the side shed. I open up the lockbox. I open up the door. A giant black cat comes out, jumps off of a shelf right past my shoulder. I was like, oh, we're off to a good start here. And again, I'm superstitious at this point, but not in tune. I thought, okay, that was pretty wild. My clients finally pull up. They're coming a little late from work. And you can see the house. It's on top of a ravine. It's backing onto a cornfield, some other pastures, and then there's this just drop off the one side. So if you're looking directly at the house, you've got the shop here, you've got the house here, and then this drop. Immediately I can feel that there's a young female who passed just off the ravine. I don't know if she was murdered or if she just fell down the ravine and passed away, but immediately that's what I felt. And I thought, okay, that's kind of interesting. I don't love that. My clients are head over heels for this house. They just love it. We walk in the front door. I walk into the kitchen, and all I feel is like sponge. It's almost as if the plywood underneath is wet and like spongy. And I'm asking them if they can feel it. And I'm saying, this is really, really spongy. Well, we feel it a little bit, but like not what you're describing. And I'm like, no, I'm bouncing. Like, this is dangerous. Kind of weird. Didn't think much of it. We go upstairs. As we're walking up the stairs, the light above us is just flick, 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 flick. And I thought, okay, old home, probably has some knob and tube wiring, no biggie. We go up to the turret, which you have to access through a ladder. I go up, smoke my head. Their kid goes up, smokes his head. Their daughter goes up, smokes her head. I thought, okay, that's not a great start either. Pretty cool view. You can see the entire property from this turret. It's got like a full round window at the very top of the house, and you can see everything. I thought that's kind of neat. And this property had been on the market forever. So this is the other thing about home energetics. When your property has something attached to it, sometimes it will sit longer because people feel the energy and they don't understand the subtleties of it and just feel it. So we come down from the turret. We go into this room at the front. It has a big giant porch off of the front of the house. Immediately I'm getting the ick. And sometimes when I'm having an icky moment, I start to gag. It's really irritating, but it's a pretty good indicator that there's something wrong. Just my gag reflex is like, no, this is a red flag, or my stomach gets upset. We walk out, we're kind of looking at it. I said, don't go any further. I think it's dangerous. We come back in the room. There are 2 knee walls. So if you've seen a 2-story home that's older, it's usually got a pitched roof. Sometimes you can access the attic from either, like a staircase up, or you've got the pitch where there's knee walls, meaning like it's halfway up it's straight and then it's angled. So this particular room had 2 knee walls, and it's a completely empty room. And I open them and we check it out. I'm always looking for, insulation, bats, whether or not it's finished, if you could use it as potential closet space, what have you, because in those old homes you really have to be careful about how much space you have available. I open up the knee wall. It's spray foam insulated. It's gorgeous. Top notch. Looks really good. Close the knee wall. You guys hear that? Yeah, we heard that. I'm like, where are your kids? Like, they're just They're messing with us. The kids come back in the room. They're like, oh no, we were on the other side of the hallway. Lights flickering like crazy. Just, we're going to have a seizure. Like, this light is going nuts. And then I'm like, okay, very funny. Everybody stay here. I'm going to go check the other side. And I'm looking for rats or animals or anything that can create this noise. I look at the other side, close the door. You guys heard that, right? Yeah, Brittany, we heard it. Okay, cool. We leave the room. I'm like, okay, that was just whatever. There's an animal in the wall, clearly. We go back to the main floor, and I'm looking at this hearth. And it's like a beautiful old school hearth. It's got radiant heat, which is very effective, but can cause issues because you can end up with water on your walls, etc. Sometimes it can create sounds like knocking. The radiant heat didn't go all the way upstairs. They had forced air upstairs, but radiant heat only on the main floor. Okay, kind of weird. We go downstairs, and typically I wait until the very end to make sure that people go in front of me, especially if you're with somebody that you don't know. You want to make sure that you have an exit. This is a nice young family. Chances are slim. And they go down first, and everybody gets down, and I come down 3 steps and feel like I got punched in the gut. Hadn't eaten anything that was funky, no nothing. I feel ill, like I'm about to throw up on the floor, out of nowhere. And I was like, okay, it's kind of weird. There's no weird smell. There's no nothing. Like, for a basement in a house this old, it was fully painted, like completely waterproofed. Like, somebody would be going down there and being like, for an old house, it's pretty good. Nope. Instant gut rot. And I was like, okay. We walked around a little further. They had an old cistern, looked in there. That room wasn't as bad. Came back out to where the stink pipe was for the septic. Feel like I'm gonna throw up. I'm like, okay, we gotta leave. They're like, why? And I'm like, I don't feel good. They're like, okay, but we're not really done. I'm like, I don't care, we gotta go. Let's leave. Okay, we get outside. I feel better. Okay, that was kind of strange. Didn't think too much of it. I had pointed out a number of different things that were not great about the home because, of course, it's old, thinking these guys weren't gonna want to pay what these sellers wanted for it. I get an email the next day, Brittany, we really like that house. We want you to write an offer, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, I gotta call you. Why? I said, I gotta call you. We gotta talk about this. I don't want to write that offer. So I respectfully declined over the phone. I said, you are my clients. I love you. There's no effing way I'm putting you in that house. Why? Basically, he's doing the calculation in his head, and he's like, this is a $35,000 commission. Why won't you write this offer? I said, because I'm not putting you in that house. And he's like, this is so weird. Like, do I need to find another realtor? I'm like, do whatever you want. I don't care. I'm not writing that offer. Okay. That's a little strange. I said, it is strange, but it is what it is. Not doing it. Okay. So I hear back from them about a week later, and they're like, doesn't matter. Our financing wasn't organized. We weren't going to be able to offer anyways, and then it goes conditionally sold. Thank God. And I'm like, okay, it's nothing. We'll just let it go. Not going to think twice. I'm cruising around Instagram one day, and I see somebody that I follow in their stories sharing this beautiful driveway up to a house on the hill. Somebody on my Instagram bought the frickin' house. They're now moving in. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. I'm just going to watch from afar kind of what happens here. So I was keeping tabs on it. Didn't say anything to my clients at this point because there's no need. And I would say about a month and a half later, I'm looking on this girl's stories, and it says, just moved into my lovely dream home, the house on the hill. The septic tank backed up into the house and just cost us $45,000. Ching! Sent it to my clients, and I said, this is why you couldn't buy that house. My client was not a believer. And he's like, how did you know that? Like, you're actually creeping me out. Like, how did you know that? I said, I don't know. And at this point, again, not a medium. I just knew. And you can't buy that house. Like, you just couldn't buy that house. And he's like, okay, thank you so much. Like, really appreciate you letting us know. And he goes, now you've got clients for life, because not only did you refuse a commission, but you basically saved us money that was not affordable to begin with, because the house was over $1 million to start, right? And it's just not affordable at all. So I keep tabs for the next 3 years. And I look back again. And this person who purchased that home then ended up getting divorced in that home as well. And the relationship that they had been in for quite a few years disintegrated. And I'm telling you, knowing what I know now about energies of homes, that house has something to do with it.